President Uhuru Kenyatta go to The Hague or not? That is one of the stories that we are covering for you tonight. A very good evening and welcome to KTN Prime. My name is Wilson Buru.
And I'm Nancy Katchingira. Wilson and I are very glad you could join us this evening. And it's Monday. You know what that means. We've also got Job Center coming your way. Today we'll be looking at whether there still are jobs in the world of computers. That's all coming up on KTN Prime. But right now, here are the highlights.
It's entirely up to the defense to request to the judges which mode of presence or appearance they would prefer.
If we had those options, he would have been told. But this time the request was specifically that he does appear.
The ICC dilemma. Just what options does the president have? A voice for Susan. Doctors give hope to Westgate survivor.
He looked actually at the timelines. It's not possible to have a referendum by August of 2015.
I'm not sure that we will gain very much by going through this long, divisive process.
Also, do we really need a referendum? A view from the experts. And why would an old woman defile her own grandson?
Now let's begin tonight with that story that could once again put Kenya at the center of a diplomatic standoff.
And it is, of course, the big question. Will President Uhuru Kenyatta present himself before judges in The Hague next month?
An official of the ICC based here in Nairobi says the president is free to request for a video appearance, but there is no guarantee that his wish will be granted.
KTN's Asha Mwilu begins our coverage with the tough choices facing the president.
The week's tone set by ICC's request to have President Uhuru Kenyatta physically attend a status conference on October 8th has angered his political base.
Hakuna haja ya kupiga farasi ambaye amekufa, ni maiti. Kesi ya ICC ilikufa zamani.
But the debate has now shifted to the possible legal and diplomatic implications that would follow if the president failed to attend the session in person.
When the court issues summons, the first summons that were issued is on the understanding that summons are sufficient to ensure that he attends before court when he's required to. So if the court feels that the summons, existing summons are not sufficient, then we might see other drastic measures like issuance of a warrant of arrest.
The judges have not had any cause to believe that he will not comply with the judge's order. If you're talking about consequences, it's up to the judges to assess the legal consequences that may follow should a suspect, an accused person not comply with the court orders.
Most of us are oblivious to seeing the distinction between Uhuru as an indicted person and Uhuru as the president of Kenya.
ICC's outreach coordinator in Kenya, Maria Kamara, says Kenyatta's legal counsel can still indulge the court on other options for President Kenyatta.
It's entirely up to the defense team of the accused person to request to the judges or propose to the judges, suggest to them which mode of presence or appearance they will prefer for the judges to consider. So a proposal by the defense team would not automatically translate to an acceptance.
If we had those options, he would have been told. But this time the request was specifically that he does appear. And you remember even in the very beginning of his appearing, that was that there will be occasions when he'll be required to appear personally, and there will be occasions when he could even do video or a conference hearing.
If Kenyatta chooses to travel to The Hague, he will set history as the first sitting head of state to ever appear before judges of the International Criminal Court.
The ICC does not distinguish on the basis of status in society, and his appearance, even though he is the head of state of Kenya, would not have a negative impact in regard to diplomatic relations.
Although the African Union pronounced themselves in the way they did, to me, and in international law and as far as the ICC is concerned, that was immaterial. What was material is a country like Kenya deciding whether they want to continue to be a member or not.
The ICC has indicated that the session will discuss what it calls pending issues in the Kenyatta case, and the prosecution's claims that Kenya has refused to cooperate are expected to be a main feature. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
The Big Q in association with Kenya Power.
And that brings us to our big question tonight, and we are asking, should the president skip the ICC session as suggested by some leaders? Should the president skip the ICC session as suggested by some leaders? Tongue twister.
Yes, let us know your thoughts on this. Now, of course, if he actually does go to The Hague, he will be the first sitting president, the first head of state ever to appear before judges at the International Criminal Court. So, should he go or not? That's the question. Let us know what you think, and you can do that by tweeting us at Katchingira, at Wilson_Mburu, and at KTN Kenya. If you'd rather SMS, you can do that as well. 22155. That's the number. Start with a yes or no so that we can add your opinion to our poll. And of course, we'll be looking at your feedback in just a little bit. So as the president decides whether to go to The Hague or not, let's go back a little bit and look at the history of this case. We've been hearing about it now and again coming up. Well, the ICC. But how exactly is this case progressing? Can you tell us a bit about that, Eden?
Well, to figure out how it's progressing, we have to find out where it started from. And that's precisely what I'm doing, giving you a timeline of how far we've come in terms of ICC. It's a word or a phrase or abbreviation we've heard since 2008, actually, not 2009 as indicated there. February of 2008, the initial markings of ICC in Kenya. This is when the Office of the Prosecution said that they were going to conduct what they called a preliminary investigation into the post-election violence. At this time, you'll remember in October of that same year, 2008, the Waki Commission released their report, which also included a much talked about sealed envelope, which allegedly contained names of those who were highly responsible or most responsible for the post-election violence. Now, Waki did say that if the country had not set up a tribunal in 6 months' time, he would forward that envelope to the ICC. Whether or not that happened, we will never really know. And then we skip until November 26, 2009. Ocampo files a request to open investigations into Kenya. Now, this is almost a year after he had indicated interest in the country. And at this time, he made his request, and it was not until 4 months later that the trial chamber actually issued a decision that there was reasonable basis to start a case in the country. Fast forward again to December 15th, 2010, Ocampo requests the issuance of summonses to appear for Ocampo 6. We will all remember this day, the faces on our screens. Ocampo was basically saying to Uhuru Kenyatta, Francis Mudhaura, he was also saying to the Deputy President, Major General Hussein Ali and Henry Kosgei and Joshua Sang, that I am coming after you. That is the indication he gave in December 15th of 2010. And then we move to 2011, the years are progressing and now a lot more is happening. On March 8th of 2011, the pretrial chamber 2 issued the summonses to appear. So the 6 knew that they had to make it to The Hague. Without wasting any time, the Kenyan government 23 days later said that the Kenyan government, the Kenyan government, without skipping a beat, filed an application challenging the ICC jurisdiction over the ICC cases. Let's not forget that as they're doing this in 2011, in 2009, Parliament had actually rejected a proposal to have a local tribunal in the country, which would have seen Kenyan judges as well as international judges sort out this issue of post-election violence. Let's move forward to January 23rd, and that's in 2012. The pretrial chamber 2 confirms the charges, specifically of Uhuru Kenyatta, whose case we're looking at right now. This was This was on January 23rd. On January 26th, President Uhuru Kenyatta, at the time finance minister, resigned from his position, but he still maintained his position as a deputy prime minister. And then we moved to 2013. Last year, the prosecution requests a 3-month postponement. But before that, January 23rd, 2012, Trial Chamber 5B rules on excusal from trial should actually be 2013, when Uhuru Kenyatta had already been to trial and he was now requesting for time away because of his exceptional duties as the president, of which he was granted. At the time, politicians were saying that, look, there's no way you can run a country if you have to be back and forth from between Kenya and The Hague. And then December of 2013, prosecution requests a 3-month postponement. Now, this came as a shocker to a lot of people who had been following the case, because Ocampo 2 years earlier had said, we will make an example out of Kenya. And here, Fatu Bensouda was saying that she didn't have enough evidence and requesting for an additional 3 months. October 7, 2014, this is when the case against Uhuru Kenyatta should have ideally started, having been pushed from February 5th. But now it won't, because Fatu Bensouda once again has said that the Kenyan government is not giving me adequate cooperation. But the Kenyan government has gone to The Hague and said, look, we've given you everything we can. And so it now remains to be seen what will happen with Fatu Bensouda and the case, and whether or not, as you've asked, President Uhuru Kenyatta will appear at The Hague.
Right. It's been a rather long and protracted process.
Long and protracted. And there's a lot of things that I haven't mentioned. So those are just the key highlights of what's been happening since 2008, February.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Edith
Thank you for
Kimani
having
there.
me.
And don't forget, you can weigh in on our discussion this evening. We're asking you whether you think that the president should skip the ICC session, as suggested by some leaders. We'll get to your feedback on that later on.
Let's now move to a story on terrorism. And 2 German nationals were today deported from Nairobi for allegedly being members of Somalia's Al-Shabaab terror group.
The 2 were arrested on Saturday on arrival at Frankfurt Airport. The Federal Prosecutor's Office said in a statement that the men were detained in Kenya last month and deported to Germany.
Both are alleged to have gone to Somalia in 2012 and taken part in Al-Shabaab operations.
Now, these deportations come just a day after Kenya marked a year since the Westgate attack.
And tonight, experts are giving messages of hope to a woman who lost her voice during that attack.
Now, doctors say that Susan can still regain her voice if she gets the right treatment.
But as Catherine Omonto now reports, such specialized treatment will not come cheap.
When Susan Njuguna was rescued from Westgate on the 21st of September 2013, she had no physical injuries that she could speak of.
What is clear is that she was extremely vulnerable. Her inner resources to cope with any trigger seems to have been exhausted at that point. So if something was going to trigger her, it could have been still, whether it was going to be her speech or her memory or something else.
There are 2 main explanations to what happened to Susan. Either she reacted to the chemicals in the building.
Because there were so many chemical things there. It's a possibility she would have reacted to some chemical or fumes from certain areas, and then she got inflammation of the vocal cords, which has interfered with the movement of vocal cords. It's a possibility.
Or the more likely explanation is that Susan is going through post-traumatic stress disorder.
So some people react differently. Some people can lose their voice because they don't want to talk about it, what happened. It is imprinted in the brain, they don't want to talk about it.
So the normal way to process a decision takes about 24 milliseconds. But when there is danger, that process is halved for purposes of safety. So it goes to around 12. In that process, some data gets lost, whether it is memory loss, whether it could be your mobility, whether it could be a speech. So things get interfered with because the process is half, so that the chemicals or concentration for protection goes to the essential parts of the system.
Since KTN aired Susan Njuguna's story on the 14th and 21st of September, many good Samaritans have come out with possible solutions. One even suggested an electrolarynx.
So even if psychology, even if you put the electrolarynx, it will not do anything. It will just be there. Because you need to get the the force, the pressure, the sound, the vibration from your lungs to come and to stimulate the vocal cords, which is running cells. You have to stimulate it to boost sound, to sound for it to vibrate. You can now maneuver it, produce a sound. But she needs to be investigated properly, first of all, before you think. A larynx is very severe.
So she has to rebuild an inner resource of support to know how to calm herself, to deal with anxiety, and slowly start processing the traumatic event in a very safe environment. That happens through the help of a therapist. But also therapy does not just remain within that session you're with a therapist, but also as she goes home, are there triggers, and is she able to manage to deal with those triggers? And triggers come from senses. What did she hear? What did she see? What did she touch? And such things, if she tested anything at that time, those are things which are now coded to the traumatic event.
The doctors we spoke to would first like Susan to undergo investigative tests to determine she has no physical trauma. At Kenyatta National Hospital, investigative tests at the ear, nose and throat clinic and a neurological scan could cost up to 20,000 shillings before treatment.
The fact that she has not recovered her speech, and of course there'll be more medical tests to be done to see if there's any other neurological damage, is mainly that the system has not recovered and it's stuck in that process of state of danger. And so she will require a lot of support, first to relearn how to be safe and to start processing little information with time in a safe environment, so that the system starts learning that Westgate is not happening again, because that is what is happening to our system.
The cost of private therapy could be too much for this single mother of four who has sacrificed her own health in order to put food on the table. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Well, it's a rather sad story, a single mother of four who lost her voice as a result of the trauma that came with the Westgate attack. But the doctors are saying that this story could have a happy ending. And I want to bring your attention to this tweet from G-Square94. Now, we aired Susan's story on the 21st of September, and he goes ahead to tweet, "How about a voice for Susan? To crowd fund her therapies, it will go a long way. Anyone?" And he goes ahead to say, "I'm ready." Well, we've definitely taken you up on that. And tonight we're saying, if you have any ideas on anything that we can do to help Susan, maybe you know of a specialist, maybe you know of some treatment, go ahead and give us those ideas. You can SMS us on 22155, or you can tweet us at KTN Kenya, at Kachingira, at Wilson_Mburu, and use this hashtag, a voice for Susan, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that she gets some help.
Well, let's move on. And up in the north, police officers charged with protecting Kenya from terror and other forms of insecurity have a distressing story to tell. In this season of remembering Kenya's encounters with terrorism, KTN's Sharon Momanyi brings you the story of Kenya's police officers in the northern border.
Dark clouds hang over this police station at the Kenya-Ethiopia border, as if eerily bespeaking of doom that would appear to have befallen servicemen here. They are few in number, this often making it impossible for them to combat armed militia.
We are human beings like anybody. How do you encounter a force of 100 people who are well armed with all sophisticated weapons? Our force also, despite the fact that we are trying to arm ourselves, but we cannot match with the kind of arms these people to carry.
As if that is not enough, their living condition is wanting. This is what the police officers call home, with makeshift structures which they use as bathrooms and kitchens.
You have to get good, proper housing conditions. You have to get also what they call the amenities, staff morale, promotions, transfers when it is due. One is due, but that's not happening. Now, when you live in this place, you become so desperate and so frustrated.
And when push came to shove, the officers turned this water tank into a house. Remember, water too is a scarce commodity here. The officers are disappointed with their authorities.
But once maybe something has come up, they just rush to that place and then make a scene out of it. But the real work they're supposed to do is not being done. They're supposed to monitor the promotion of officers. How is it being done? They're supposed to monitor the transfer of officers. How is it being done? What is the morale of the officers? Who is maybe sleeping on his duty?
These unfriendly conditions have seen the officers be less vigilant and effective in carrying out their duty of defending the border. The situation posing further security problems to an already insecure region.
Rather some difficult working conditions there. Well, now let's go to that word that has been on everyone's lips, referendum. The push for a referendum by CORD and the Council of Governors may actually not materialize in the next 1 year. Constitutional experts say that a referendum can take place at the very earliest in June of 2016. The experts who addressed a forum in Nairobi say that clear timelines are set out in the Constitution before a referendum can be conducted.
Your questions to the
With the push for a national vote by CORD and the Council of Governors picking pace, the forum organized by the Kenya Alliance of Resident Associations was aimed at debunking the myths surrounding the referendum calls, even as those behind the Okoa Kenya and Pesa Mashinani campaigns defended their cause, accusing the government of failing to meet its obligations.
Get down to business. Sort out the problems that people are raising, which would not have crystallized into a referendum question had you been taking your duty seriously.
We have consulted for the whole year. We have been in summit twice. Everything we have agreed on, hardly anything gets implemented.
The Secretariat, pushing for the collection of signatures for the Okoa Kenya campaign, says it has already surpassed the 1 million signatures mark. But experts who took part in drafting the Constitution say collection of signatures is just the beginning of the long road to a referendum.
The deal looked actually at the timelines. It's not possible to have a referendum by August of 2015.
From the verification of signatures by the IEBC, submission of the referendum bill to each county assembly, approval of the bill by at least 24 county assemblies to debate in Parliament. Experts say the earliest a national vote can take place is June of 2016.
I agree with your timelines, precisely that, and that is why we are starting it now, because we know we'll be voting sometimes in 2016. I have no illusions myself.
I'm not sure that we will gain very much by going through this long, divisive process that CORD and the Council of Governors are committed to.
And the experts are not ruling out challenges in the referendum push.
Supposing the county assembly may defer the approval of the bill, or majority of county assemblies do not actually approve of it, then perhaps 20% of registered voters in half of the counties do not vote.
CORD and the Council of Governors are pushing for a referendum to amend clauses in the Constitution to, among other things, increase the allocation of funds to the counties and overhaul the electoral system. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now let's go to matters devolution, and the Cabinet Secretary in charge of that docket, Anwar Guru, has moved to reassure civil servants that the ongoing biometric registration of public officials is not aimed at retrenching those in their ranks. Speaking in Kisumu during the launch of the exercise, the minister affirmed that the state wants to understand the nature of its human resource and its capabilities. The shake-up that began in earnest across the country today is expected to last 2 months and will involve enumeration of both national and county government employees as the Jubilee administration seeks to address its bloated wage bill. Public servants across the country have been jittery about the process, fearing mass retrenchments that could render them jobless.
This is part of the joint rationalization program between the national government and the county governments. It was agreed in the summit of last year, June, that we will carry out this exercise. We have been taking it step by step. We're now here to start the process of biometric data capture for officers both at the national government who are at the county level and also for the county governments.
And next, a story that's difficult to fathom. A 3-year-old boy in Elgeyo Marakwet County has been defiled by his grandmother, who is said to be HIV positive. The boy, however, has to wait for 3 months to know his health status as the mother struggles to get justice and medication in a village where even talking about such an issue is forbidden. KTN's Mercy Kandia reports.
She keeps her child close, wishing that 2 weeks ago she would have been closer, been there for him when the unthinkable happened. 3-year-old Tom, not his real name, was defiled by his neighbor and grandmother.
Mtoto nimemuuliza akaniambia alinifanyia kwa nyumba na akanifanyia kwa shamba penye kuna lokoyagi machungwa damu hii. Sasa mtoto anaongea tu kabisa vizuri lakini mpaka wanajaribu kufunika hiyo maneno.
The boy's mother was in Eldoret town. The boy and the rest of the family live in Cherorget village, Elgeyo Marakwet County. The suspect is said to be HIV positive. The mother took the child for medical checkup a week later when the child confessed to the act. To ensure that the child's health is okay is not her only battle. The family wants her to let the matter lie low.
Mimi nataka rights ya mtoto wangu, kama ni kufuata hata hospitali na ngoja nipate pesa nipeleke referendum ni wapime mtoto vizuri. Hiyo after 3 months still nitaenda kufuata story ya mtoto hata kama sina pesa na hakikisha. Juu mtoto ni yangu na siesi. Ngoja nikuje mtoto anitesa baadaye na nilisa mzuri.
Statistics obtained at Iten law courts indicate that up to 10 defilement cases per week are heard. 90% of the cases are perpetrated by people known to the victims. The law states those found guilty are liable to life imprisonment and not less than 10 years for an indecent act with a child.
Sasa mimi sina shida, mimi sijaenda kustaki ashikwe, juu hata sina haraka ashikwe. Hata nipate mtoto wangu ako sawa na ameongea ukweli, sina haraka ya kufunga mtu. Nifungie mtu nini na hakuna faida? Shida yangu ni kupata haki ya mtoto.
Her efforts to get justice for the child in the village, requiring her to pay 500 to 1,000 shillings for the Council of Elders seating. Money she says she doesn't have, needing even some more currently to take her child to a referral hospital to get ARVs, preventive care for her 3-year-old son. The said grandmother walks free but couldn't be reached for comment. It is a mother's search for justice that seems to be taking too long, but for her, she says, her longest wait is the 3 months she has to wait for her baby's results to come back, hopefully this time with good news. Marcy Kandie, KTN, Cherorget Village, Elgeyo Marakwet County.
Very disturbing story, that one.
Very sad.
Now, it's Monday night, and if it's Monday night, you know that Case Files is going to be on your way immediately after this bulletin. And tonight, Dennis Onsarigo will be looking at part 2 of the murder, or rather the mysterious killing of a master's in journalism student at the University of Nairobi. That is Mercy Kaino.
That's right. Mercy Kaino was discovered dead on Waiyaki Way more than 4 years ago, and her death, just like that of her one-time campus friend Corinne Chepchumba, has remained unresolved.
Part 2 of Mercy Kaino's story coming up after this bulletin. And here's a sneak peek of what you expect.
And a friend sent me a text, R.I.P. Mercy Kaino. I looked at Faith, the sister.
I was told the Dean of Men was looking for me. So I went to the men's dorm. I was wondering, what is it? What have I done that the Dean of Men is calling me?
There are certain people who have testified, and I would feel that they actually say the truth.
I slapped like 3 slaps. Yani, okay, siwezi count. Several slaps. Yeah, several slaps.
It is not clear how a very, very drunk Mercy managed to sneak and run faster than 2 bodyguards and Scholastica Kamemba.
Well, it's time to take a short break now, but not before we remind you of our big question tonight. We are asking, should the president skip the ICC session as suggested by some leaders? Remember that the ICC has requested the president to be at The Hague physically, and we're asking, should the president skip the ICC session as suggested by some leaders?
Quick tweet here from Chief Manene. He says the president should attend the ICC trials via Skype to help him run the country without an absence. You can let us know your thoughts by tweeting us as well at Kachangira, at Wilson_Mburu, and at KTN Kenya, or send an SMS to 2215. Start with a yes or no. And of course, we'll take a look at more of your feedback and a poll result at the end of this bulletin.
From their mobile phones without having to interchange the SIM card. And after months of exchanges, the verdict is finally in. Adelaide Changole has more.
Tighten your seatbelts and check your harnesses. The Communications Authority of Kenya has approved the use of thin SIM technology in the country for 1 year, setting the stage for bare-knuckle brawl between players in the mobile telephony sector.
The authority will allow the use of thin SIM technology under strict observation for a period of 1 year.
The technology, forwarded by FinServe, a subsidiary of Equity Bank, will allow Equity Bank customers to access all their banking needs without the need of a mobile transfer service through the use of an ultra-thin SIM card.
That the thin SIM complies with all minimum mandatory international standards pertaining to the manufacturing of the thin SIM. No major complaints, and particularly on interception of traffic of the primary SIM card, has been reported so far.
But market leader Safaricom had raised objections to the technology. It's born of contention that the thin SIM would, among other things, interrupt and intercept communication. But CAK has not bought this argument. However, before Equity Bank can pop the champagne, it will also have to obtain authorization from the Central Bank of Kenya before rolling out.
If the application comes, the Communication Authority has already allowed them, then for us it's actually to repackage the products, the financial products that they are going to offer to the market.
CA has warned that if any vulnerability is discovered from the use of TICE's thin SIM card during the 1-year trial, then operations of the thin SIM card in the Kenyan market will cease. FinServe was awarded a mobile virtual operator network license in April, which allows it to roll out mobile services, including mobile money transfer, without setting up its own infrastructure. The bank has partnered with Airtel Kenya to carry its network. Adelaide Chongole, KTN Business.
And incoming Kenya Airways Chief Executive Officer Mbuvi Ngunze will take over a month earlier than previously communicated. In a notice sent to the Nairobi Securities Exchange, KQ Board Chairman Evanson Monike says Ngunze will take over from the 1st of November as opposed to the 1st of December. No reason was, however, given for the change. An outgoing CEO, Titus Naikuni, who is retiring after 11 years at the helm, is, however, expected to oversee the transition process until December. We'll now take a look at how the money worked for you and how the Kenyan shilling did perform today.
Financial Report, brought to you by KCB Home Loans.
We got 105% mortgage from KCB.
It covered all our costs. Deposit, legal fees, duty, everything. We've seen an apartment, but go to KCB.
Welcome to KTN Sports. Now, polo has remained the rich man's game in the country due to the high costs involved. The polo player is required to own at least more than one well-bred horse. The sport is, however, set to go through a different phase after mobile manufacturer Samsung signed a 5-year sponsorship deal that will see them expand the sport's fan base across the country.
The Nairobi Polo Club played host to the International Polo for the last 2 weekends. The weather was beautiful and the crowd turnout was amazing. However, polo as a sport is yet to gain popularity in the country, with most of the people still perceiving the sport as a sport for only those people who are financially privileged. Or is it?
No, it's expensive.
The sport demands heavy investment.
Despite polo being among the oldest team sports as well as an Olympic sport from between 1900 and 1939, the sport is not considered for commoners in most of the countries. In Kenya, the sport is still viewed as far out of the common mwananchi's reach. This is a notion the mobile device manufacturer Samsung are hoping to change in the next 5 years.
We are trying to open up and let more people come and view. We have an open session. You don't need to pay, come and experience it. And going forward, you want to make it actually broader.
Currently, the best and consistent polo players in the country hail the sport as a family bonding opportunity. The Senator for Baringo County, Gideon Moy, is among the polo pioneers in the country.
The attraction for me was that polo is a combination of hockey, rugby, but most importantly, it is chess at 40 miles per hour. Very exciting.
Moi has slowly seen his sons grow into the sport, and they often play against each other, while there are times they come together to compete as a team. Among his most memorable polo highlights are steering his team that comprise of 2 of his sons to the prestigious Mags Mag polo title.
There's polo, the whole family goes. So it keeps the family together. And as you know, the family who stays together, prays together, always stays together.
So as a child, ever since I could walk, would always be by the polo sidelines, you know, supporting him, giving him all the, and then cheering him on. So you grow in the atmosphere, you grow in the environment, so naturally you become a polo player yourself.
Keegan Moi was part of the team that won the subsidiary tournament at the International Polo Weekend held at the Nairobi Polo Club, and although he admits to being privileged, the Bristol University law graduate believes the sport can be open to more Kenyans.
I don't necessarily mean that I want every Kenyan to play, because of course this won't be possible. But as I was saying, what I want is for that everyone to be part and parcel of the polo society and the polo culture.
In average, a polo player is expected to change his horse after every chaka, and players can at times use about 7 horses in one game, which can be quite an expensive affair.
People are now investing in good horses, so as a sport, the game is getting from strength to strength, and a lot more Kenyans are now playing polo.
As compared to other sports, polo may not be where it ought to be in terms of popularity among Kenyans. However, there seems to be light at the end of the tunnel. Well, let's wait and see what 5 years has got to offer. Lynn Washira, KTN.
Well, it's time to wind up the bulletin, but not before I remind you of our big question tonight. We did ask you whether you feel that President Uhuru Kenyatta should honor the summonses at the ICC, and we have a couple of responses.
Yes, we do, and the poll results as well. 51% say yes, and 49% say no. Let's take a look at some of those responses.
Martin from Nairobi says, the president, as any accused person, is under a legal obligation to attend court personally. Secondly, as a leader, he should be leading from the front by complying with his legal obligations.
All right, and another one here, this one from Michael Z. He says, no, otherwise the ICC will definitely consequently embarrass him by labeling him as uncooperative.
Well, that's all we had prepared for you tonight. Thank you very much for being with us on KTN Prime. Remember that Kiss Files comes up right after this. My name is Wilson Buru. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.
And thank you also for contributing to A Voice for Susan with all your ideas and feedback. A lot of suggestions have been made to set up a pay bill number. A lot of you say that you're willing to contribute. We'll definitely be working on that. Our sign language interpreter tonight was William Silla. I'm Nancy Kachingira. It's good night for now. See you tomorrow.
This is KTN. Welcome home.